Hello, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well today. So what we have, of course, is my team selection here for this game week. Pretty solid team. No Foden, of course, once again. We'll see how that goes. But majorly, of course, the idea here is, unfortunately, with the Senesi injury, I can't really replace him adequately. I think I have a strong enough defense to sort of avoid a -4 for him. I did decide to go for a free at 29 pass, so repivoted back there. And of course, we now have Solanke back in our team as a captaincy. And Tony, of course, has left the team as well. The Tony punt for the 2 weeks really hasn't worked. And, we have to take that on the chin, as well as obviously a lot of the points that we've lost on the way. But this is the team as it stands. I think it's very strong for Game Week 28. Question, of course, is going to be around Game Week 30, I suppose, what we can do there. And on Game Week 29, if we can find any differentials, which would be nice on a free hit draft. But probably it's just going to be hoping that, ultimately that all the big players that we want to have in Game Week 29 will do well, and that people who aren't free hitting will lose out on 2 or 3 of those players, which hopefully can be possible. Or of course they have to take hits to get there, which means that we'll claim the points back via the lack of hits. So that's sort of the thinking right now in terms of the short-term plans. Of course, a lot of people will be thinking about what to do with Salah, what to do with Darwin, what to do with Foden. Those are sort of the 4 players that I'm thinking about as well. But then even outside of the Liverpool City landscape, you have, let's say, Isaac, other players as well to think about. So those kind of things I think we can sort out later down the line, particularly if we get information on Game Week 30. I think that's one sort of nice thing about free at 29 is that you can kind of forget about your transfer for 29, and it doesn't really commit you to, let's say a Salah or a Foden too far ahead of the future. You can kind of wait and see what the fixtures are for 34 and 37 on Game Week 30, and then you can actually make your move. So let's say if we actually get a double for Bournemouth, then of course we can sort of react accordingly and things like that. So yeah, this is my team. 1 free transfer was made, as I said, Tony to Solanke. Let's just go through the chat questions. Nice to see you around, Hanny. Wesley as well, triple captain Solanke. Good luck with you as well in Game 28. I do think that this is a good opportunity to triple captain Solanke. I am obviously a bit worried about the overall news that sort of Antonio Irola gave us. Potentially it is the case that Solanke clearly has some sort of injury and that he needs to manage it for the rest of the season. I would tend to think that if you, let's say, are open to keeping your, let's say if you free at 29, you probably won't be using a chip on Game Week 34. If that's the case, then I think you can hold off your triple captaincy. If you are waiting, for example, for another week to do so, like let's say 35, where maybe Chelsea could have a double, I don't think it's worth it because that double just doesn't seem very strong. Dimitri, thank you so much for the super chat. Which defenders are worth a hit? You've got Senesi, Gabriel, Doughty, Robertson, Estu. Goalkeepers are Dubravka and Areola. I think what you can do is Dubravka to Neto. That for me is worth a hit because also we know that Pope is coming back soon, and Dubravka won't get the double gaming 34 unless something has changed. For example, the timeline of Pope. On top of that, I would say just looking at your defense. So you probably want to play Gabriel Doughty this week. I would just change Senesi for Zubani for a -4 as well. I think those two are worth the hit, in my opinion, because Senesi is not going to change your Game Week 29. Obviously, you can go for a Luton player, but you already have one really in Doughty, and so you have Doughty. I don't think Reguilon, for example, is worth a hit, right? So when we talk about Reguilon, he's probably worth taking a hit for next week. Same with Pedro Porro. Like these 2 players don't have excellent fixtures this week, so I'd much rather you wait for next week to actually do that. Lucas, shall I play Madison or Garnacho? I would play Garnacho personally. You've got Son from Spurs already, tempted in Garnacho, but at the same time, United. Yeah, I know United continue to be atrocious, but actually Garnacho still continues to have really good underlying stats. So I would probably stick with Garnacho in this situation. Would I start out Ait-Nouri or Pau? I would definitely start Ait-Nouri. It's just the quality of, Fulham attack versus Spurs attack, but then also Ait-Nouri actually has a little bit of attacking upside, and we don't know exactly whether Pau will have managed minutes once again. So I would definitely start Ait-Nouri. As far as Garnacho or Palmer, Son or Garnacho or Palmer, are you benching 2 of these players? I'm kind of curious. I would start Palmer actually over everyone else. Kanan says, shall I start Garnacho Palmer? Still start with Palmer here. Start Garnacho Foden. I think it's close, but I actually think I would go with Garnacho. If you want to take, for example, the risk versus the field, I think this is a good opportunity to do so in this game week. Ultimately, Foden's effective ownership will still be, very, very high. It'll probably be within the high 70s. Are you willing to take that sort of punt in terms of effective ownership? If you are, I think it's a good chance to do so. Start Pedro Neto or Garnacho. I'd still go Garnacho once again. Because also, yes, of course, Pedro Neto's fit and available, but we don't know whether he's going to play the full 90 minutes once again. Easy Thrifty. Hi, Fran. Holland to Solanke. You've got Watkins and Morris, not free at 29. Um, hmm. Yeah, I mean, you're kind of forced to doing that move, aren't you? So yeah, I agree. That would be the move to make. As first says, he's got Salah, Rice, Saka, Palmer, Foden in mid. Watkins, Holland, Solanke in forward. Whom should you bench? I mean, you should probably bench one between Rice and Foden. I'd probably bench Rice, but it's up to you. Lurin again says, hi, triple cap. Once again, I've sort of answered the triple captain question. Would you sell Tony to Solanke and then bring Tony back next week? I would just sell Holland to Solanke now if you are not going to free at 29. Alfred says, should I sell Holland and Foden to Bowen and Morris for -8 and keep free at, or just do? Honestly, it depends on how many players you have, right? I had 6 players. I still decided to sort of pursue free at 29 instead. It's up to you. Surely Pedro Neto is better than Bruno. I don't think so. First of all, I don't know whether Pedro Neto is going to play the full 90. And second of all, Bruno's on penalties. Start Walker or Porro. I would actually start Porro. Fran, you do not free at 29, says David. Need 2 midfielders. I mean, I think Bowen this week. Okay, well, you already have Bowen and you've already got Son. So who? I think you kind of have to go Ross Barkley as one of your midfielders. As far as another one, I mean, it's got to be Madison, right? Zubair says start Walker or Porro. I'd probably start Walker. Sorry, I'd start Porro. As I've answered. Anish says, hi, Fran. Captain, Solanke or Morris? Definitely Solanke for me. Hi, Fran. Bench 1. Douglas Luiz or Garnacho? I'd probably bench Douglas Luiz. I've already answered the Walker or Porro question, so I'm just going to... Man, the chat is popping. Zach as well. Thank you so much for the super chat. So your question is -4 for Estupiñán to Doughty. Have Kirkes, Gabriel, Ake, and Estupiñán. I think the -4 is worth it, particularly if you're going to pursue just regular, playing 29. I think that would make the most sense. But it comes down to what strategy you're going for. I think if let's say you're going for Doughty and you're actually planning a free at 29, I don't think it's necessary really to go out of Estupiñán to go to Doughty. So it really comes down to whether you play free at 29 or not. If you are playing free at 29, I'd probably skip that move. Milinko, thank you so much as well for your super chat. On wildcard, bring in Reguilon or Nico Williams or second Luton defense. I do think if you are planning to play free at 34 with wildcard 28, I would actually go with Reguilon. I do like Barkley though on a wild card, particularly on your trajectory. I don't really like a second Luton defender though, because I mean, unless you go Kaminsky, right? If you go Kaminsky, I think that's the second Luton defender that I can kind of back. But otherwise, probably not. And Henry, thank you so much. Welcome to President. Hope you're doing well, Henry. Anish as well, member for 4 months. Awesome. Planning to bring in Tony and Reguilon next week. Solanke and Senesi out. Yeah, I think those are very good transfers. As I said, Reguilon is definitely a player that I'd like to have on Gameweek 29 if I'm pursuing either a free hit or just regular transfers. Other questions in chat. Would I bench Palmer or Odegaard? I'd probably... Close one there. I'd probably just reluctantly bench Odegaard. I mean, Brentford are a much more capable team than Sheffield United. I'd like to think, of course, that this is a better fixture for Palmer as well this week. So, good opportunity for Palmer. I like Robinson Fulham despite him being on 4. Yeah, no, I mean, Robinson's a great pick. 4 yellow cards isn't really a problem, though, is it? Or do you mean he's on 8 yellow cards? Or do you mean he's on 4 yellow cards for this sort of this run of the second half of the season? Bench Odegaard, he is good, but he does not return much in home games. I mean, I'm not like a home and away person in terms of players. Like, I don't actually believe in the Anthony Gordon at home situation. I just think that that's how the fixtures have fallen in terms of how well he's done, and that's fair enough. But for me, I mean, generically speaking, like, do I prefer Palmer or Odegaard in isolation? It's Palmer. Benin says, hi, I am free at 29, need a trippy replacement for this week and give me 30. So you need a free... Okay, you're free at 29, so you actually need a player who plays in Gameweek 30. I mean, I think still a Bournemouth player makes sense, right? Bournemouth play Everton at home, so you probably just I think Zabarnyi is fine because of course this week great fixtures, and then okay you get most of the value for Game Week 28, and then I think you can just say you can take the L on Game Week 30 because alternatively you can go for a Chelsea player, but does it really make sense to go for a Chelsea player right now when you have the value of the Bournemouth player with the double? I don't think so. So I would definitely go for a Bournemouth defender. Saliba or Zabarnyi? I would just go Zabarnyi. Um, should I do a -8 for Solanke, Neto, Zabarnyi? You're free at 29. I think that -8 is perfectly fine. A lot of the players that we can go for this week in terms of Bournemouth are worth it in terms of hits. Just personally within this game week in the context of being good for game week 30. Is it so bad to carry a Bournemouth keeper? No. Is it so bad to keep let's say Solanke? Absolutely not. He's one of the best forwards in the game. Is it so bad to have Zabarnyi as your fifth, fourth defender? Not really, once again. So, and also if they actually get a Game Week 34 double, that's even better. Or of course, let's say if you're planning for free at 34, I mean, if that fixture drops on 37, that's also not too bad. Are you doing Senesi to Zabarnyi? No, I'm not. I don't think I'll do it. Because the way I see it is, if I do Senesi to Zabarnyi, I have to go out of Saliba, and I have to kind of bench Saliba. So the question, of course, is also comparing, let's say, Neto to Zabarnyi. Is it really worth it for a hit? In my opinion, it's not. If you were, let's say, doing the transfer, without a hit, I think it's fine. If you didn't have Saliba, I also think it's fine. For example, some people don't actually have three defenders that, in my opinion, are as good as me this week. So let's say if you actually had, I don't know, someone who's injured or someone who had a bad fixture. Let's say you have Walker this week and he's one of your three defenders. Then, of course, it does make more sense to actually take a hit for Zabarnyi. Am I free agent 29? Yes. Garnacho, Palmer. Palmer, triple captain Solanke. I still think it's worthwhile. I don't have a triple captain myself, though. You think Barkley is better than Chong? I do think so. Hi, Fran. Do you think Palmer will outscore Gross by 4 points this game week? I mean, I can't justify that, but I think it is worth a -4 in the grand scheme of things. Another thing that's interesting with Gross, too, is, of course, a lot of the injuries, that Brighton have suffered. I mean, we've already seen an immediate drop-off in terms of form. And second of all, we're seeing less Gross minutes as well. Last week, he was substituted. Also made a pretty key mistake, for example, within the Premier League fixture as well. He got his pockets picked by Bobby Reid. So yeah, things to think about too. Salah news. I mean, I don't think there's any news in terms of Salah. Are you talking about Salah's, for example, availability or something like that? I'm sorry, just quickly checking if there's any news available for us this week. So let's just quickly have a look. I think Dominic Solanke's trained yesterday. So I think triple captaincy still seems to be on for most people. Yeah, it doesn't really seem like that we've actually got any sort of Dominic Solanke news. I think he's more than likely going to play, but we haven't got any confirmation from anywhere or anyone that he's going to start. Ake or Bradley, I'd probably go with Bradley. Play Tony or Gordon, I would definitely play Gordon. Bench one, start Son / Barkley / Morris Watkins. I would just bench. Mate, I would probably actually bench Son. That feels horrific though, but I think you've got two doublers and you've got Watkins with a great fixture, and Watkins is at home as well. So I'd actually probably bench Son. That sounds ridiculous, but yeah, I'd probably do that. Solanke news. I've sort of given what I have. Unfortunately, it's not a lot, but the reality is we don't have significant news for Solanke. What is my plan for Game Week 29? I mean, we can draft the Game Week 29 draft if you want, but I'll just make a free at 29 video. I mean, there's no plan really. It's just I'm going to play free at 29. It's going to have the most common players, and that's that. Bro's not captaining Haaland. Why are we? Why would we captain Haaland versus Liverpool away? Honestly, if I didn't have, let's say, Solanke this week, I still think I'd be captaining Neto instead. I mean, he's my vice captain. Chewy, nice to see you're doing well. Is 9 players in 29? I think that's totally fine, honestly. If you are actually angling for free at 34, I think 9 players, 10 players, it's something that I mentioned previously as well. Like, that's fine. I mean, I was gunning towards it, but then I still think that based on, the fixture guru convergence around Gameweek 34, it does seem to be a lot weaker of a week than we previously expected. So that was a small concern for me. And, eventually I decided to switch my draft around to, well, not my draft really, but obviously my team around to free at 29. But yeah, I mean, if you're planning free at 34 and you actually think that you like the upside of going for the players that we expect to double in that week, I think that's really fine. If you already had Solanke in your wild card in the same team, what would you have done this week? I would have just gone Zabarnyi. Zabarnyi for a free transfer, bench Saliba, call it that at the end of the day. Start Neto or Garnacho. I'd probably start Garnacho. Hey, Fran, start Foden or Luis. I'd probably start Foden. Neto over Saka Vice. I think I'd definitely like Neto the goalkeeper. Yeah, I think that's a better Vice. Kirkes or Smith. I would go Kirkes because Smith, in my opinion, is less likely to keep his spot for the long term. Whereas at least with Kirkes, you have a chance, right? Start Son or Garnacho. I would start Son personally. Eze, Foden or Palmer. Play 2 bench. I'd play Eze. I'd play Palmer, and I'd bench Foden. Do I play Ait-Nouri over Senesi or sell? Yeah, of course you play Ait-Nouri over Senesi, because unfortunately Senesi is just completely out. I think playing Ait-Nouri is fine. This is a good fixture for him. Foden or Garnacho? I would go Garnacho. Rume says, urgent. You don't free it in 29. You've got Saka, Haaland, Foden, Luis Diaz, Gabriel. You want to replace all, but by whom? I mean, I think Bowen is a good transfer. If you want to go out of Foden or Luis Diaz, I think Bowen makes the most sense. Probably Luis Diaz out first. If you want a forward, obviously, I don't know if you have Solanke, but I would go for Solanke. If you don't have, if you already have Solanke, obviously just go for Haaland to Morris. Haaland or Odegaard? I'd play Haaland within a heartbeat. Foden Garnacho, once again, I'd go Garnacho. Start Garnacho. Tony, easily Garnacho. I mean, Tony's literally got the worst fixture of the season. Bench Douglas Luiz, Son or Palmer. I'd bench Douglas Luiz. Who are the 2 best goalkeepers to own for the remaining weeks? I mean, it depends on whether you're kind of free at 34 or free at 29. I think if you're free at 34, you probably actually want to go Flecken and Neto. If you're free at 29, you probably actually want to go Kaminsky plus someone that we expect to double on Gaming 37. So either, Petrovic, if you really think that he'll keep his spot, which I actually think he will. Or obviously you can go for, I don't know, maybe I mean, maybe you're actually staring down at someone like maybe Ederson if you can afford him, or you can just go with Raya, who's also like a very simple standard keeper who's amazing. And Kaminsky covers Give Me 28 and 29 for Raya as well. Start Neto or Garnacho. I'd start Garnacho. Start Garnacho, Odegaard. I would actually start Odegaard in this situation. Kabori or Saliba? I'd go Saliba. The thing is, with Kabore, I mean, even though we expect him to start, the big thing that sort of differentiates him with Doughty is Doughty's got those set pieces. So without those set pieces, I think, Kabore falls short. Because if you actually look at the Luton clean sheet odds, even if you add those 2 games combined, Kabore simply still is the pick that I would say is worse, right? Because those Luton clean sheet odds are actually worse than Arsenal's. So the only thing that Doughty has going for over Saliba is those incredible underlying stats that really come from the fact that he's a set piece merchant. And that's totally fine because he's also very active in terms of open play. So is Kabore. But if you look at the expected goal involvement for Kabore, it's still pretty minimal. Brandon, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you for your first super chat as well. Start 1 between Palmer, Tavernier, and Madison. Start 1. I'd probably go Tav because, I mean, Tav is the doubler here. I do think it's tough, though, to... What's the situation that leads you to only to benching Palmer and Madison? Because I'd love to have played Palmer this week. I'm just kind of curious what your team situation is. I also missed 2 super chats. I'm extremely sorry about that. So Edvigio as well. You asked about triple captain Solanke. It seems like the news that we have on Solanke is quite positive. So I would still triple captain Solanke. However, I did mention to the chat earlier that let's say if you are planning for free at 29, that means double gaming 34 is open to you as a triple captaincy week. Now, the issue, I suppose, is who do you actually triple captain on that week? It could be Isaac, it could be Eze, could be Fernandes. Those sorts of players are not bad too, but actually, because United have a good fixture, I think Fernandes is probably interesting, whereas Newcastle's doubles aren't, they're not electrifying. I'd probably still go with triple captain Solanke because at the end of the day, he's more than likely going to start. He did train yesterday, and it's a good position to be in to be able to sort of play those 2 doublers. Thank you for your third super chat as well. Those twins as well. I also missed your super chat. Extremely sorry about that. You asked about benching Douglas Luiz for 4 defenders. I completely agree with that assessment because Gabriel and Saliba still extremely high clean sheet odds. Douglas Luiz is probably close to Saliba. So the question I suppose is going to be, is it Douglas Luiz or Saliba for me as opposed to anyone else? Everyone else on your team, I would definitely start with ease. But yeah, I think it comes down to those two questions or those two players. And honestly, I'd probably actually just play Saliba anyways, because it seems like Saliba has less ownership compared to Douglas Luiz. So it's a good chance to actually get potentially more rise if you think it's a 50-50 decision. So that's how I'd answer those questions. Apologies once again to Avigio and those twins. Amarildo as well. Thank you so much for your super chat. -8 for Areola, Senesi Neto, and Zabani Kirkes. I think, once again, it makes sense, right? Because the clean sheet odds for Bournemouth is something like 65%. So, I mean, 65% of 6, obviously, you know what that is. You have the appearance points as well, and they're actually quite likely to concede less than 2 goals for both the 2 games. So, you're kind of baking in the 4 appearance points. You're baking in maybe, of course, more than half of a clean sheet. That's around 7 points, right? And yeah, I think it's worth the hit ultimately because there's not many players this week who themselves even have close to that sort of clean sheet percentage outside of Arsenal. So unless, for example, you're in the situation that I am, where let's say you're comparing someone like Saliba to Zabarni, that's probably not worth a hit. But of course, if you're comparing someone like Pau Torres to Zabarni, I think that's worth a hit, right? In terms of, let's say, who you'd be able to play. So yeah, I think those two players are, in theory, genetically speaking, worth a hit. And Anish, thank you so much as well for gifting a membership. Who actually got the membership? Let me actually quickly check in chat. Has the membership actually been dropped? Oh, Kanan, awesome. That's so awesome. Kanan has actually been a pretty frequent viewer of the channel as well. So thank you so much, Anish, as well. Really kind of you, so appreciate that a lot. All right, quickly going back to chat. Oh, Salah as well with a super chat. Thank you so much. You've done gross /Neto to Eze/Tavernier for a hit. That's interesting. Can I ask if are you going for a free at 29? I think you must be, right? Those are very good transfers, though. I do like those. Hopefully, Tavernier starts the 2 games. I am a little bit concerned because, of course, Kluivert is someone who could get 2 starts potentially, but I think it's very unlikely. But Tavernier, we expect to get 2 starts, but I also don't know whether that's going to happen. When's the deadline clock coming up? I did try installing the deadline clock, but it just, I didn't have one that actually looked very good. So I'll try to kind of customize my own deadline widget and get that going for next week. Hello, Fran. Is Zabarni worth -4 for a transfer? I think generally speaking, yes. Why don't I sell Haaland 3 bad fixtures in a row? Well, I'll be covering one of the bad fixtures with the free at 29. This week, it's a bad fixture, obviously. The Arsenal one too, but ultimately, at least he's at home for Gameweek 30. And, for this week as well, unfortunately, there's no other premium in the game that I think actually has a good fixture, right? Where, Salah, we can't guarantee whether he's going to start. So I think it's very likely that he comes off the bench. So can we really compare Salah to Haaland then? And then the question, of course, that you're probably going to ask me is, someone like Haaland to Morris. But then I think Morris 30 and Morris 28, is it good enough to justify a transfer out from Haaland? I don't think so necessarily. So for me, it's not worth a hit. And for me, Tony had such a bad fixture this week compared to Haaland that it made more sense to go out of Tony as well, particularly since I'm pursuing free at 29. Benin says free at 29, wildcard 35, bench was 37. I think that's amazing. Yeah, I think with that sort of strategy, you probably still want to triple captain Solanke, and the news on Solanke seems to be quite positive. So Pedro Neto to which midfielder? No free at 29. Probably Ross Barkley or Bowen. F Ground says, yo, Fran, is Bowen, Palmer, Sock, and Gordon a good mid? That's a great midfield for this game week. I mean, Gordon's probably not one of the best picks this game week, but I still think he's a very good player. No complaints. Why is Morris for Haaland not good if you're free getting 29? I mean, ultimately, you're going to lose the value of getting a Morris fixture and giving 29. So you don't even have to compare Haaland for Morris. And then it's actually Haaland this week versus Morris, which obviously Morris is slightly better, probably 1 or 2 points better. And then the question is going to be on Game Week 30, is Morris actually better than Haaland? And actually, even though it's Arsenal, the big thing that I would say that switches things around is that it's Haaland at home. And Morris, generally speaking, I mean, even with a good fixture on Gaming 30, which it really isn't because it's not a good gaming fixture on Gaming 30 for Luton, I don't think it compares a lot. So another thing you need to think about too is that if you're making a transfer to go out of Holland, you're also saying that you're going to get more value out of it. You know, I mean, if the difference is only going to be 1 or 2 points, I don't think it's really worth the transfer. Gordon to Barkley, I think that makes sense, of course, if you are free at 34. Talk about Saka. I think he's fine. I mean, we know from Arteta mentioning that he's ill. I don't think that changes a lot of our considerations about Saka. Is he a captaincy, vice captaincy option for this week? Not really. But yeah. Would you take a -8 for Emi Martinez to Neto? I mean, once again, this depends on whether you're free hit 34, right? Because if you're free at 34, you actually need Emi Martinez next week. So it's not worth the -8 or the -4 rather. As far as, let's say, Emi Martinez to Neto if you're free at 29, I think that's actually pretty good. But you also need to think about, is Emi Martinez in Gaming 30 going to be really useful to you? So there's a little bit of a flip side there where Neto, of course, has a good fixture on paper for Gaming 30, but is it better than Emi Martinez's? Probably not. So it comes down to whether the hit is worth it from that point of view. I would actually generally say that it's worth the -4 if you are, as I said, free at 29. Salah says, I will be doing free at 29, Kluivert, or I would actually consider Kluivert, but I think it's pretty risky because I would say Kluivert seems like he's more like the pick that you want to go for if you're kind of looking at him as a short transfer, because you can't imagine that Tav or Kluivert are going to stay in your team for a long time. So I kind of like Kluivert. Oh, my captain's Haaland. I'm so sorry about that. You're right. Aha. Yeah, sorry. Apologies about that. Let me quickly change that graphic. You've got me there. Abbas says, would you go with Gusto or Virgil van Dijk in 28 wildcard? I'd probably go with Gusto. I think Gusto makes sense, of course, if you can afford some additional sort of benefits, right, within your wildcard and things like that. All right, let's update that graphic. Apologies. I realize I've been baiting people, so yeah, that's my bad. I will not be captaining Haaland. I would probably go Kluivert though, Salah, just in terms of the punt potential here. Start Kaminsky or Areola, but keep in mind, I think the biggest risk for the Bournemouth midfielder this week is that we don't think anyone's actually guaranteed 2 starts, even though we've seen more minutes for Tavernier over the course of the season. Do I transfer Neto, Zabarnyi for Senesi and Turner? My second keeper is Dubravka. Yeah, I think that's worth it. I think the Neto move makes a lot of sense, and of course, if you're comparing Zabarnyi to Senesi, I think that's also fine too. If you're free at 29, how do you plan for Gaming 34? I think generally speaking, we probably want to have one Everton defender around Gaming 33 or 34. Another thing that we need to think about too is that, as I said, we don't know exactly what the doubles are for Gaming 34. It could be a Bournemouth double, it could be an Everton double, it could be, we are expecting the Crystal Palace, Newcastle, and United doubles to be there. So obviously, it's probably going to be transfers for someone like Garnacho, transfers for someone like Isaac, and I think that's good enough because a lot of the single game weekers still have decent fixtures. What is my transfer plan for Gaming 28? I mean, I only did Tony to Solanke, and that's it. Free at 29 is the big transfer plan that comes out of this. Kirkes or Doughty over the next 3 to 4 game weeks. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, the Neto transfer makes a lot of sense for me, Zach. So I would probably do that. Barkley over Foden. I would probably start both Barkley over Foden, yes. FPL Clyde, thank you for the super chat. Neto, Gabriel, Dunk, Doughty, Kilman, Saliba, Palmer, Saka, Bowen, Solanke, Watkins. Would I bench boost? Honestly, I would bench boost that. I can't complain. That's a pretty good bench boost. I would bench boost that. Neto or Morris? I would go Neto personally. Once again, the Neto versus Morris thing and even the Bournemouth versus, let's say, Luton player thing, it comes down to whether you're free at 29 or free at 34. If you are actually a free at 29 player, it makes more sense to go with Bournemouth players. If you're a free at 34, that Luton extra fixture is going to make those transfers more worthwhile. I am going to go free at 29 though, to respond to your question, WT22. Jay Wavy, should I start Nuri or look in to bring in another defender for a -4? I think you can just about start Ait Nuri for. I would start Ait Nuri. Um, Triple captain Solanke. I think it's still worthwhile. Morris or Barkley. I'd probably. I mean, it depends actually. So who's actually going out of your team for Morris, and who's going out of your team for Barkley? Because independently, I'd say Morris is better. But once again, it comes down to who's going out of your team. Mal. Worth taking out Martinelli for a -4, considering you're free at 29. I mean, Martinelli actually seems like he's fine though, right? That's the only thing I'm thinking about. Is it worth a -4? I don't think so. Actually, I think I'd probably start Martinelli because the news on him seems to be fine, unless I'm wrong. If Martinelli is not going to start this week, then obviously yeah, do a -4. But as far as I'm aware, Martinelli could very well start. Start Neto or Madison? I'd probably start Neto just based on the fixture. Arsenal. Oh, he said Martinelli's being rested. Okay, fine. I would take a -4 then. Yeah, 100% take a -4. Because if you can guarantee a Martinelli bench, then do take that -4, of course. De Bruyne or Garnacho, I'd probably go Garnacho. Start Haaland or Garnacho, I'd probably go Haaland in this situation. Who do I sell for Bowen, Foden, or De Bruyne? I'd probably sell De Bruyne. Just because, okay, like once you sell, let's say De Bruyne for Bowen, the reality is you probably want to get Foden back later on. So if you can keep Foden, why not? Gross, Garnacho, or Foden. I would start Foden and Garnacho, I think. Pretty close, because right now with Gross, I don't know. I mean, I'm not 100% certain about his minutes, but I think, yeah, Garnacho Foden makes the most sense for me. Start Haaland or Garnacho. I would start Haaland. Who to bench out of Saka, Foden, Palmer, Gordon, Bowen? I'd bench Gordon. So I think the question there is actually who to bench between Foden and Gordon. And I would actually like to start. I would actually rather bench Gordon than Foden. Because the fixtures for both are pretty tough. Super chat from Mo. Thank you so much, Mo. Hi, Fran. Would you do Taylor to Porro for -4? Don't think Taylor's getting anything in Gameweek 29. I agree with you. The thing is, though, with Taylor to Porro, do you have to start Taylor this week is probably my question. Because I think Taylor to Porro is actually worth it for as a Gameweek 29 transfer, but as a transfer this week, I'm not sure if it's necessarily worth a -4. But I mean, yeah, fine. If you're going to start Taylor this week, then I would just go Porro anyways. Hajer, thank you so much as well for your super chat. If you have any questions in chat, feel free to drop them in chat. I'll look out for your username because I think you didn't put any sort of text messages around that. Sideways to Odegaard or Barkley Kluivert for the double game week. I think Kluivert is probably really nice for. I mean, it depends actually. Once again, I think I would go Barkley if you are not free at 29. If you're free at 29, I'd go Kluivert. So that's probably my answer. And yeah, I would bypass Odegaard this week. Vasilis as well. Welcome to Captain. Thank you so much for joining as a member of the channel. Appreciate you. And Murphy as well. Super chat too. So Murphy, your question was Kirk is in now or Reguilon next week. I would probably still go with I'd probably go for Reguilon because with Kirkus, you kind of want him to start in Game Week 30. You can't guarantee that because maybe Lloyd Kelly's back. And then another question, of course, is going to be how good is Reguilon? I think Reguilon's good enough for a transfer as well. But the thing is, if Kirkus is actually just a free transfer for you, I would do the Kirkus move and also do the Reguilon move. So I know it sounds bad to do both. Maybe it actually results in you taking a hit for Reguilon, but I still think it's worth it in terms of getting the upside of Kirkus for this week because not many people actually compare to him this week. And you have to think that's probably like 7+ points potentially for Kirkes. It's probably worth that transfer. And that Reguilon move is also worth that transfer next week as well. So actually, yeah, I would actually say Kirkes and Reguilon if it's possible. Lurendrin as well. Hey, bro, I did KDB to Son. You've got Osho wondering if he starts. I could bring in Zabarni with. I would go Zabarni here in this situation. Holland to Morris for a -4. See, I know you're yeah, I wouldn't Holland to Morris for a -4 makes no sense to me. Do you mean you're doing free at 29 though? That's the biggest question that I would say. Non says Neto or Garnacho. I would go Garnacho in this situation just because we can't guarantee the amount of minutes that Neto would play. Trying to look for if Hajar asked anything in terms of chat questions. So apologies. I'm going to quickly look for if he's posted anything in chat. I can't see anything in chat, so apologies. But yeah, if you drop a message, do let me know. Hope you're doing well. Dan Watson as well, super chat. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that, Dan. Hey mate, which one would you bench between Palmer, Foden, Gordon, Saka, Douglas, Luiz? Honestly, I think it's between Gordon and Douglas Luiz in that situation. Because I've previously answered the questions in terms of, let's say, Gordon versus Foden, and I would go with Foden. Honestly, I'd probably bench Gordon, and I'd probably start Douglas Luiz in that situation. It's close between the two of them, though. And good luck to you this week, Dan. Conrad as well. Nice to see you around from Hong Kong as well. Doughty for a -4. Have Gabriel / Saliba / Zabarni / Neto. Is Doughty worth a -4 there? I don't think it's worth it. Because the reality with Doughty is, right, is we actually expect less clean sheets than the Bournemouth defenders. So if you actually look at the clean sheet odds, Arsenal have better clean sheet odds for that one fixture versus Brentford compared to Doughty over 2 games. And yes, of course, Doughty has really good underlying stats, but is it worth a -4? In my opinion, absolutely not. True Fandela says, -8, move Haaland to Morris, Haaland back in Gameweek 31. Nothing to lose this season. -8 move. Once again, I'd probably still say no. I think just for a hit, Haaland to Morris doesn't sound like a great transfer to me. Now, it comes down to, you know, could you be taking a hit instead on Game Week 30 for someone like Salah? Maybe you could, and maybe that would be better. But I still like Haaland to... I mean, I still like keeping Haaland for this week in general because I would say Morris with a hit is probably going to be worse performing than Haaland. Now, if you are free at 34, then maybe it could be just about worth it. But would I do it? Probably not. If it allows you to get Salah on 30 though, and that could be the upside for you, then maybe yes, like on that very specific condition. E7, hope you're doing well. Good morning from New York City. Nice to see you as well. Must be extremely early as well. So good morning to you. Which to Virgil van Dijk, Branthwaite, and Gusto? I would start Gusto within a heartbeat, and I mean, Everton, they're against United away. Honestly, I'd probably go Virgil van Dijk and Gusto. I'd back the home player there in terms of Virgil van Dijk versus Branthwaite. I'd definitely not start Walker because I'm still expecting Liverpool to score, but Gusto actually has the best fixture, so I would definitely start him. So in terms of those two starting, I would do that. Top De Bruyne replacement. Once again, it depends whether you're free at 34 or free at 29, because you can easily go towards one of those make-weight players like a Barkley or a Tav or a Kluivert. Garnacho or Haaland, I'd go Haaland. Start Saliba or Zabarni, I'd go Zabarni easily. Garnacho, Haaland, as I said. I'm just going to have to just put you in timeout, though. Top De Bruyne replacement. Once again, as I said, I think I'd rather go for a make-weight player this week because it's not like someone like Son or someone like maybe Palmer if you don't have Palmer already. But it's hard to go for example, a Spurs midfielder this week because they don't have the best of fixtures, so you don't have to necessarily go for them this week. This is a good week to go for a doubler depending on your free hit strategy. Morris for Haaland or Barkley for Foden, who would you transfer? I would probably actually go Morris for Haaland. Just because I think the idea is that you can always go for Salah. Hi, Fran. Slept in. Would you do Senesi to Zabarni for -4 play Porro? -4. I would probably just about play Porro. Eze? I think Eze is a great move. But Eze, once again, is depending on your free hit strategy, right? And also, if I had to compare, let's say, Eze to let's say, I don't know, Tav or Kluivert. I mean, obviously it's the safer move in terms of the long-term minutes. Yeah, I think Eze is actually a really good move as well. But you'd know that obviously by transferring an Eze, you're also looking more towards the long term. So it's more of a long-term play. 318935. Yeah, I can have a look. Vasilis. So you're planning to Solanke captain. So I imagine obviously you're going Tony Solanke. Okay, you've got pretty much a similar-ish team to me. Yeah, I think that makes sense. No brainer. Let's see. Questions in the chat. Why not Captain Watkins? I mean, it's a good question. Hajar, the question was Garnacho or Palmer. I think Palmer within a heartbeat, my friend. Ultimately, it's a penalty taker. Ultimately, two good home fixtures. Everton actually a pretty good defense. Newcastle not a very good defense. I would go Palmer easily there. Keaton as well. Thank you so much for your super chat. And once again, Hajar, thank you for your super chat as well. But sorry, Keaton, going back to your question, Gabriel, Doughty, Gusto, stick or mine. I would actually keep that team. Gusto's very good for this week. Doughty definitely not worth a -4. Gabriel also not worth a -4 for me. KDB to Sun for a -4 from Iron Mike. Also, thank you for your first super chat ever, Keaton. Iron Mike says KDB to Sun -4 or Foden to Bowen -4. You're free hitting in 29. So I think because you're free hitting in 29, there's no reason to do Foden to Bowen at all. I'd rather go. I'd honestly probably skip both of those moves because ultimately, do I think Son is going to outperform KDB? Okay, maybe KDB to Son -4 actually makes sense because let me think about it. I mean, you've got KDB versus Liverpool. You're still going to benefit from Son versus, or rather, Son in Game Week 30 versus, let's say, KDB who's versus Arsenal. So I think KDB to Son makes sense, whereas the Bowen move makes less sense because the benefit, of course, the Bowen move is this week, but then actually you probably still want to have Foden coming back, out of Game Week 29, and you'll have him, right? So I'd rather go out of KDB. I'd keep Foden in this situation, and that's the same for a lot of managers as well, who are dealing with dilemmas like KDB and Foden, like who to go out first. I'd go out of KDB first. What am I free hitting Game Week 29? Foden or Garnacho? I'd still start Garnacho. This is a good week where if you actually have a really strong team, a really well-rounded team to bench Foden, and it's free risk. But of course, there's the downside of that is, of course, it's Foden. Carl, sorry if you answered this, but Holland to Morris for -8 if you're free at 34. Yeah, I think it's worth it for a hit, Carl, just about. But yeah, I mean, you have to be 100% sure that your team doesn't have any issues. Because also, if you think about it like this, like the reason why you'd be going Holland to Morris is actually specifically to go towards Salah as soon as possible in Game Week 30, right? So I think the biggest thing that I would ask you is your team, capable of making that transfer to Game Week 30? Are there any other pressing transfers? Or does keeping Holland in your team actually still make sense? Saka in the squad. I think we all expected Saka to be in the squad. I can't see any late Saka news. I'm trying to look if there's any leaks right now, guys. Let me have a look. I don't think we actually have any leaks today. Sorry about that. Yeah, no leaks that I can see, or at least as far as I can see. As there a Barkley, I still prefer the short term of Barkley, and as I said, Barkley is more of a free at 34 move, whereas Eze is actually a free at 29 move, if that makes sense. Start Saka or Son. I would still start Saka over Son, but I would love to start both if possible. Start Kaminsky or Areola. It's obviously Kaminsky for me. Is Neto going to start? Thinking who to bench between him and Madison. Are you thinking Neto, the Fulham player? I would actually probably bench Madison. Bench Foden or Walker. I would actually bench Walker easily. Start Gross or Foden. I would start Foden. Start Garnacho or Foden. I would start Garnacho. Free at 29. Van Dijk to Doughty -4. I think that's actually probably just about worth a -4. Wait, sorry. Did you say you're not free at 29? Perfect. That's fine. Trossard or Palmer. I would definitely start Palmer. I mean, Trossard, you can't even guarantee that he starts versus Brentford, right? Although obviously if Martinelli is rested, I guess you have Trossard on the left wing. That's a good point. I'd still start Palmer. Free at 29, Foden or Hwang to Palmer / someone else. I would probably go. I'd go Hwang to Palmer. Because Hwang's injury is very long term, so I would rather keep Foden. Start Porro. I think it's fine. I mean, if you don't have a Bournemouth defender or an Arsenal defender or a Luton defender to start, and that Luton defender specifically being Doughty, then of course, I mean, don't start Porro. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, of course, you start Porro. Free at 29, Neto to Bowen for -4. I don't really like the Bowen move if you're going free at 29 because, I mean, a lot of the value towards Bowen is actually the fact that he plays on Game Week 29. So, otherwise, I'd probably bypass Bowen entirely. Alfred Peterson as well. Thank you for your super chat. What transfer am I looking at this week? So my transfer this week was Tony to Solanke, because obviously I went for the Tony sort of punt within my own team to try and get some more points over Solanke when he had, for example, the City fixture. Didn't really work out, of course. So we're going for the Solanke captaincy. So therefore Tony to there. Thank you guys so much for the super chats in general today. Honestly, really appreciate the support. Mr. H, free at 29. Play Ake / Esteban. I would play Esteban. Because unfortunately, Esteban to a Palace / Fulham defender doesn't make sense this week, right? Fulham actually have a good fixture. Yes, I agree with that. But is it worth it? I don't think so. Fulham, of course, the interesting thing about them is they're more likely to maybe have a Gameweek 37 double potentially. Whereas Palace, I think we expect a Gameweek 34 double. I still like triple captain Solanke. You don't have your bench boost. Oh, that's an interesting thing, actually. I didn't really notice that. So obviously you can make these more focused moves around Gameweek 34 and 37 without feeling so bad about the bench boost. Yeah, I think generally speaking, I would play Estupiñán. I don't like the -4 for this week, so I would just play Estupiñán because Ake has a horrific fixture. And also, I just think the other transfers, you probably want to bring in the Crystal Palace or the Everton or the Fulham defender when it actually comes close to the doubles. Because this week, is it worth a -4 to get a Crystal Palace defender or let's say a Fulham defender? For me, no. Laurel, thank you so much for your super chat as well. Really appreciate that. Hi, Fran. Great content. Plan wildcard 30, free at 34, bench boost. Interesting. So you're actually going to go for a free at 34. Okay. You've got Kelleher, Areola, Gabriel, Dalot, Nuri Estupiñán, Ake, Foden, Palmer, Son, Saka, Richarlison, Solanke, Watkins. I mean, Richarlison's probably not going to play. You can obviously wildcard him back in anyways. So I would just go out of Richarlison. However, the question I suppose would be, is anyone in your team worth a hit? I think Areola has a great fixture, so I probably wouldn't touch him. Kelleher, of course, doesn't unfortunately have a good fixture. Gabriel, I would definitely play. Dalot, I'd play. Even Ait Nuri is actually quite good for this week. But would I be happy, for example, upgrading on Ait Nuri? I probably would. I think maybe a hit towards a Kirkes is actually interesting because, of course, you don't need to necessarily deal with the downside, I suppose, of, let's say if you own Kirkes, right, and he starts the next two fixtures, you're actually going to benefit a lot. Guys, thank you so much for the super chats. I'll get to all your super chats. Thank you guys so much. I just wanted to shout out. But yeah, sorry. I think you actually take a hit for someone like Kirkes because you'd get the upside, particularly since you're dead ending on Game Week 30. On top of that, too, I do know that you're obviously free on 34, so you do want to have players who play on 29 as well. Bowen makes the most sense if you can somehow squeeze Bowen into your team through Richarlison. At the same time, you could probably just go out as someone like Ake as well to get yourself the most bang for your buck. Because obviously Ake, you don't want him for this week anyways. He's probably the most expensive defender in your team. So I think that for Kirkes could make sense. And once again, if you can go Bowen, I would go Bowen. Now, I don't know if you actually have enough money in the bank to do those moves, but those would be the moves that I'd suggest. If you needed cheaper moves, I think Richarlison to Barkley at the same time could make a lot of sense because Richarlison to Barkley should hopefully give you additional money back, and then you can actually make that defender move as well. Those are the only two moves that I'd really consider. William, best trip strategy with everything but free hit. Okay, so if you don't have a free hit right now, I mean, the reality is you probably want to wildcard now anyways, right? Because I'm assuming, William, that you don't have good enough players for Game Week 29. So if you wildcard now, you'd actually get the upside of all these double Game Week 28 fixtures. You'd still be able to at least have nine players, maybe 10 players for Game Week 29. And then you can actually plan slowly towards, 34 and 37. You still probably want to bench boost on 37, if we're being honest. But yeah, I think you want to maximize on the upside now. And then you can slowly build your transfers towards probably 37 once again. Because if you don't have a bench boost for 34, there are still some players that we can transfer in just with single free transfers that would be good for 34. And generally speaking, have a good single for 37. So some of those players, of course, as a maybe Garnacho, maybe Isaac, these are sorts of players you can transfer in later down the line after your wild card this week. Vijay, thank you so much for your super chat. Couldn't see a question there, but anyways, thank you so much for your super chat. And of course, you've always been supporting the channel, so I appreciate that. Hamad, bring in Salah or Son this week, free it next week. Honestly, I don't really like bringing in either this week, right? Because this is a bad Son fixture, and you can't guarantee whether Salah starts versus City. So I just really think it's not worth it this week to bring in one of the big guns. So apologies, but yeah. I don't really want to spoil. I mean, if you really wanted my answer, I would say Salah, because Salah is going to be a captaincy option gaming 30. So if I really had to answer, I'd say that. Salah Dweller, honestly, thank you so much for the super chat. That's a huge super chat. I appreciate it, honestly. I just want to say thank you to you. I hope you have a lovely Green Arrow and Game Week as well going forward. But yeah, thank you so much. And the same with Notorious Rezel as well. Hope you're doing well. Love the hits that you usually take. A lot more hits than myself, but yeah, hope things are going well. Hope things are swinging back your way this season. Conrad says, start Saka or Foden. I'd start Saka. Yeah, I don't think that's close for me. Unless we've actually got a Saka news and I've missed it. Let me just quickly check if there's any potential leaks as well. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of news today's in terms of leaks. Carrie Ann Murphy, thank you so much for your super chat. Ait Nuri or Porro, Garnacho or Douglas Luiz? I would go Garnacho over Douglas Luiz within a heartbeat. It's a home fixture for both, but Garnacho generally prefers underlying stats more. With Ait Nuri and Porro, though, I kind of like going for Ait Nuri here, because I really think that this Porro clean sheet is, absolutely not in contention. We don't know whether he's going to have some managed minutes. He's coming back from an injury, so you never know. He could be subbed off a little bit earlier than usual. And then when it comes to Ait Nuri, yeah, I think there's a good chance here to just play Ait Nuri with less ownership as well. Neto or Douglas Luiz? Ali Hussein asks, I would probably go with Neto here. Decent chance to punt against Douglas Luiz. Haaland or Palmer or Son? Start two. I would go Haaland and Palmer. Garnacho or Neto to start? I'd probably go Garnacho still. Triple captain Solanke, good idea. I think it's still a good idea, Mr. Feather. Yeah, I would still go for it. KDB to Bowen, I think makes sense if you're free at 34. Neto or Foden, I would definitely still go with. I'd probably go with Foden, honestly, because with Neto, one of the things that I don't like about Neto this week is that we can't guarantee that he's going to play 90 minutes. So I kind of feel like going for Foden makes sense. Martinelli is not injured, but I think he's being rested, is apparently the source. But I can't confirm that source either. But obviously that's going to change people's plans if they have Martinelli in their team. Captain Saka or Watkins? Neither, if I can say that. I'd probably go with. I'd still probably go with Watkins though, just because with Saka, of course, you have, I guess, the illness issues. Watkins is on a heater, but I'm definitely going for a Bournemouth or even a Luton captaincy this week. The fixtures for Bournemouth are just ridiculous. As you can see, my vice captain is obviously going to be Neto. Foden to Bowen. Foden to Bowen only really makes sense for me if you were going for something like a Game Week 34 free hit, as I sort of mentioned. So it comes down to that. I mean, that's the best way I can answer that question. William says Zabarni or Kirkes. I think on a wild card, I would go Zabarni. If you were going to dead end, then I would go Kirkes. So yeah, if you're wild carding, I'd go Zab. Bench Palmer or Madison. I would definitely bench. I'd definitely bench Madison. Ultimately, it's an away fixture for Madison. It's a great home fixture for Palmer. His Newcastle defense obviously got a clean sheet last week, but that's not going to change what we've seen for the entire season. Irfan says, not free at 29. Did Foden to Bowen and Leno to Neto for a hit. Is it worth -4 to go Gordon to Barkley? No, it's not. It's not worth a -4 for me. I think you can just bring in someone like you can just bring in another midfielder next week instead on Game Week 29 if you really want to. But I don't think it's worth a -4 for this week to go out of Gordon. CMC Wookie, thank you for your super chat. Doughty and Zabarni are in for a -4, worth Neto -8. So I think generally speaking, Neto is worth a -4. So yeah, it comes down to what your keeper is, though. If you've got Areola, maybe less of a reason to do so. If you're someone who owns Dubravka, though, that there's 100% a reason to go for Neto. Tropical Vibes as well, thank you for your super chat. Senesi to Zabarni and Haaland to Moras for a -4. It seems like you're planning for free at 34. If that's the case, I think that's worthwhile. If it's not, then I think I'd probably question the move. If you're going for a free at 29, I probably wouldn't do that move. So that's probably how I'd answer that the best. Gross to Bowen, I think once again makes sense. Yeah, sir, if you're actually on a free hit 34 trajectory. First of all, we've seen some rotation with Gross in terms of his minutes. They're still in Europe, but actually they won't be in Europe for long after that result versus Roma. But we're also seeing that there's a couple players within the midfield coming back from injury, and maybe that means less advanced positions for Gross as well, which isn't ideal for him. So yeah, I think that makes sense to go out of Gross. And obviously fixtures do start to worsen for Brighton a little bit more. Start Power Porro. I would start Porro in my opinion, because Pau, you can't guarantee whether he's even going to play more than 45 minutes. He's coming back from an injury. He's been injured a couple times this season. There's no reason to sort of strain him. It's going to be a tough fixture. So I would go with Porro. Obviously, Porro coming back from injury as well, but it is his first injury, and he is crucial to the team. And of course, an extremely attacking player in a fixture where I think both people will lose their clean sheets. Start Gross or Gordon. I'd start Gross still. I mean, it's a home fixture. It's a good home fixture. Bench Foden or KDB. I'd probably bench KDB at this point. Triple captain Solanke. I would still go for triple captain Solanke. Start Madison or Neto. I'd probably start Neto. Start Garnacho or Foden. I would go Garnacho. Start Virgil van Dijk or Pau Torres. I would still once again go with Virgil van Dijk. It's a very tough fixture for Virgil van Dijk, but so is it for Pau. And then it comes down to aerial threat, like other things or other avenues where you can get some points from one of the two. I would go with Virgil. Porro or Udogi on a wild card. I would probably go with. Honestly, I think it comes down to cash, right? Do you need the additional cash? And will it change your draft substantially, right? Because if you go Udogi, you save probably 0.6 million at the bare minimum, or 0.5 million. Is that going to be something that can actually make or break your draft structure? Start Foden or Gross. I would actually definitely start Salah playing. I think he's going to play, but I can't confirm whether he's going to start or not. Sorry about that. Salah Ahmed says, went for Kluivert as he has 2 differentials. I mean, those are 2 awesome differentials. So I'm going to be looking out for Kluivert for sure, and I'm wishing you all the best with Kluivert. Watkins or Son? What do we talk about in terms of Watkins or Son? Are you talking about starting Watkins or Son? I would probably start Watkins. Gabriel not in the squad. Are we trolling here? Are we trolling here? I don't see any news about Gabriel not being in the squad, so I'm going to have to say we're trolling. Start Foden or Gross? For me, Foden, just about. Palmer or Ross Barkley? I'd go with Ross Barkley. Just about Ross Barkley, yeah. Gross or Neto? I still go with Gross. Start Tony or Neto? Neto for sure. Palmer, Ross Barkley. Ross Barkley. Gabriel benched. Are you the same person saying Gabriel benched? Gabriel not in the squad. Wait, what is going on? Let me read this. Who is saying Gabriel's benched? Okay, you guys are just trolling. Why am I looking at this? Start Rashford or Gross? I'd probably start Rashford. Saka or Bowen captaincy? I mean, are you really not going for a Bournemouth captaincy? Tony or Palmer? Palmer for sure. Fran is benched. What was that supposed to mean? Okay, fine, yeah. Bowen or Ross Barkley? I think I would actually go Ross Barkley. I mean, why not? Bask in the doubles. Any Morris news? I mean, he seems fine. Like, if you want to go for Morris is a great pick. Start Garnacho or Bailey? I would go with Garnacho. Gordon or Gross? I would still go with Gross. Best goalkeeper pair, free at 34. Yeah, I think Neto and Areola is perfectly fine, because the alternative would have been Neto and Flecken, and you probably don't like Flecken, so just go with Areola. Save yourself some money. Start Foden or Douglas Luiz? Foden or Douglas Luiz? I would go with Foden. Guys, 1 minute before the deadline, and I'm pretty sure Gabriel's not benched, so that was just trolling. Start Gordon Garnacho? I would go Garnacho. Start Salah or Douglas? I would go Salah. Foden or Barkley? I would go with Barkley this week. You got someone on wild card and cap him. Oh, you got Semenyo on the wild card and you're captaining him. Good luck, Daniel. Is that just because you wanted to go for a 3-5-2 structure? Start Garnacho or Bailey? I'd start Garnacho. Guys, that's the deadline. That's it. You can't be asking questions. Pens down for sure. All right, the game is updating and it will be available soon. Triple captain Solanke, triple captain Morris for differential. No more Guys, the deadline is over. The deadline is over. Why not Haaland to Morris? Because I'm going for a free at 29. Good luck to you as well. I'm Evo. Best of luck to you. Good luck to all the members. Good luck to everyone in chat. Thank you guys so much for participating. Thank you as well to everyone who's been supporting as well through the super chats. Really appreciate it. A lot of support today, so thank you guys so much. And yeah, take care this week. Good luck, everyone. As Celador says, good luck, everyone. Hope you guys get them green arrows. Galtown, what does my free hit team look like? I mean, we can theorize it in my head right now, right? Probably Flecken, Regulon, Poro, Doughty, Bowen, Madison, Son, maybe a Nottingham Forest midfielder. So maybe someone like Alanga or Gibbs White. And then in the front line, we want Morris, Watkins, and Tony. However, if Mbumo is ready, I'm replacing that. I'm 100% replacing that. I'm replacing Flecken for sure. And I'll replace that Nottingham Forest midfielder as well. My attackers are Kudus, Bowen, Saka, Barkley, Watkins, Solanke, Morris, Son, bench. Look. Your team is so strong this week. I honestly would not have benched. I'm sorry. I would not have benched Son for Kudus. I know it's a great fixture for him. But yeah. But it's close. It's really close. Yeah. I'm looking out for my brother Mbumo. Bibek says no Saka Martinelli, but Saka's with the squad. Hold on, what? What do you mean by no Saka Martinelli? Are you saying Saka's not in? Are you saying Saka's not starting? Saka's in the squad. Martinelli is not. Okay, fine. Thank you. Too early. Source AFC newsroom. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I mean AFC newsroom is a pretty big sort of source, isn't it? Oh, Zinchenko and Zinchenko's in the squad. That's interesting. Triple Spurs, but no defenders. That sounds. I mean, it's an option if triple Spurs midfield is an option. Like, are you talking? Do I regret my wild card? In terms of how it's gone, yes. But in terms of the decision, no. Do I have a source for Man United squad? No, I don't. Yeah, I think Werner's son Madison is perfectly viable. Thank you, Bibek. Turbo Timo could be the ultimate differential. He very well could be. It's easy to regret something on hindsight. Yeah, exactly. And another thing too was that, I mean, yeah, potentially, obviously, I should have just considered Foden over Fernandes, which yeah, probably is the biggest problem. Another question, I suppose, is if I had players like Aït-Nouri and Odegaard, would I be feeling so bad about it? Probably not. So I was close to, let's say, an Aït-Nouri Odegaard draft. At the same time, I could have very well gone Garnacho and Bruno, and it could look horrible. And who knows? I mean, Bruno could do okay. So it's not over yet. We'll have to see how Bruno does. Probably not very well, but it is what it is. You started Gross and Garnacho over Foden. I think those are both good calls. I mean, the Gross and Foden one is definitely a tight call. But yeah, I mean, you have the chance to start two other players who have very similar sort of projected points. Do you think this is the most fun year for FPL? In what sense? I mean, for me, it's fun because I've done well. But in general, like, is it a bit less boring than previous seasons where I think chip strategy was very, very formulaic? I think so. There's been more options for chip strategy, or maybe that's simply because I've pursued a differential chip strategy. Is 100 points behind too much to catch? No, I don't think so. 100 points is something that you can achieve very, very quickly, even though you might not expect it. Part of that too is you also have to kind of get lucky. That's the reality of this game. Will I do a video for wildcard 3031? I think so, for sure. Yeah. I think it's more towards wildcard 31. Yeah. In terms of, let's say, just going back to the fun around the game, I think one thing we have to mention too is that I mean, it's better because Haaland being injured for some game weeks. Yeah, but I think at the same time also, like, some people, I mean, it's like, I don't know if it's like you're also kind of rewarding people who intentionally didn't go for Haaland, for reasons that aren't related to an injury, if that makes sense. The double game weeks has been super fun to battle. Yeah, I mean, we have a little bit more. We had earlier double game weeks this season for sure. Unfortunately, just due to like random circumstances. Like, for example, I think Luton's ground not being ready for their first home fixture, for example, or the unfortunate situation around the Bournemouth versus Luton game, of course. So, that's created a few more doubles. But then, what is something that I've learned new in the season of FPL? Um, hmm, I think. I think it's the idea that sometimes being overly aggressive for players who don't have consistent minutes can always, has a lot of downsides, right? Like, let's say if you go for someone like João Pedro, right, before he was actually locked into the team as a genuine starter, there's a lot of downside there that I'm not accounting for. But some of that is a bit of hindsight, right? Like, I think a lot of people felt that way about Game Week 1 with Charleston too. At the same time, there's a lot of good punts that I like. Even, for example, when I started the season with Havertz, I thought it was a good punt. But, I mean, look at Havertz the last 3 weeks. He's literally gotten, like 12, 14, 14. Like, these are still good players. And ultimately, it just comes down to what window you buy them. And a lot of it is luck related too. So I think it's just managing my emotions as well. This is something that I've managed a bit better this season. But also, when things are going well, it's also kind of easy to do so. So that's another thing. Is this your best season at PL? I started following you during the Euros. Thank you, Gautam. Yeah, I mean, this is my best season so far. I mean, we'll see how it goes. It could go worse. It could go better. I mean, this sort of position in the season, I was never top 500 at an early point in the season, and I've been 2K before, so we'll see. Do you think Emerson plays or comes off the bench for at one point? I mean, he should play. I don't see what's stopping him from playing, but I just don't like Emerson as a pick, unfortunately. When's the next deadline? How high is the number one in my league? I need to have a look at that, sorry, because I haven't checked. But then going back to the point in terms of what's my best decision this season so far? I don't know. I mean, like in terms of a single transfer, I guess Eze versus Sheffield United at home, where I got 14 points from that. FPL next year will be harder because we won't be able to afford all of Holland's Salah. I mean, I hope so. But I don't know next season if. I mean, this season, the reality is that they've intentionally priced players very, very cheaply. So I don't think they've. If anything, FPL, they're trying to make players cheaper every season. BL, did I just miss the deadline? I think you might have. I'm sorry about that. What's the biggest difference between my approach last season and this season? I think more investment into analytics. And sort of the robustness of like my ideas. Like, let's say if I'm thinking about a certain player, like what kind of minutes, if I'm thinking about a differential captaincy, like is it actually worthwhile? So I think I've definitely gone with more what I would say are sort of meta captaincies this season. And part of that is because I think in previous seasons I've been burnt by that. So I would have been, the type of manager who in the past would have captained Trent over Salah, but I think I've sort of transitioned into a bit more patient manager in that sense, where the reality, of course, is if you gave Salah and Trent, 10 games, Salah's going to outscore Trent in 7 of those games. Trent will outscore Salah in 3. So why take those chances? And particularly since I think another thing too is the more seasons you play, the more you realize that you can't call everything correctly, right? Like sometimes I'd like to think I have the golden touch, but I don't. I really don't. A lot of it is outcome. A lot of it is luck. All those Salah caps last year. I actually missed a lot of Salah captaincies last year. I think I captained Mitoma, for example. I dodged with Saka as well. Who's the most overrated FPL asset? It's an interesting question. I don't think there's necessarily one overrated. I think it's just the idea in terms of FPL where people are thinking about. I think it's always people reacting to form is always the most overrated thing in FPL. Like the people who now think that Foden is the best player in the world. We're definitely not saying that when he blanked 3 fixtures in a row. That's all I have to say. He's played brilliantly the last 2 weeks, but I mean, how can you predict this, right? Like I own Foden for all those blanks. I owned him for the hat trick as well. Maybe KDB is overrated. Obviously, I don't own KDB, so it's hard to say he's overrated because I never quote unquote rated him. just because unfortunately I think that KDB's minutes were poor. But also you have to say that unfortunately KDB also dealt with another knock, right? So when he was playing the double game week, he suffered from a knock and unfortunately was not allowed to play football. So that's just unluckiness, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think people overrating form is definitely what I would say is is the most overrated FPL asset. Um, Even though that's such a cop out of an answer. Going back to the questions though, also Saka when he has some, yeah, I mean look at that too. Like for example, like people were selling that you should sell Saka, you should sell Watkins when they had 2 or 3 blanks in a row, and then suddenly within 3 weeks Saka and Watkins are, the best players in the game, and we should be captaining Watkins every week. Like I think if you keep a slightly level head and just realize that things move very quickly in football and that unfortunately you don't capture everything, like what I tend to tell people is that, if you're so confident that you're right all the time, and if you're speaking with hindsight, start betting and start making money from it. But the reality is not many of us can actually do that at all. So that being a reality just makes it very obvious that you don't need to overreact to people getting absurdly lucky or absurdly unlucky and call them out for it, because that's just the nature of football. Yeah, I agree with you. FPL has taught me not to FOMO, just cruise decisions. I think, yeah, if the decision makes sense, with foresight, then you need to question either whether the foresight was good or, in terms of, for example, let's say you would have, I don't know, let's say you brought in KDB and you knew that there was a risk that he could get benched. If he gets benched, that's a bad decision because you weren't really even like working with the information that you had in foresight. However, if KDB gets an injury, that's very different. That's just hindsight, if that makes sense. So I think, yeah, questioning your foresight as opposed to questioning hindsight is better. Who's more essential right now? I'd probably say Salah. I mean, Salah is very nice for giving 30-31. My calmness in the context, I think playing with analytics will also make you a bit more calm because, I look at a lot of things like odds. I look at a lot of things like team strengths and things like that. And I've played at least a few more seasons now. I'm a bit more of a rookie manager than most, to be honest. One transfer, I wish I did it earlier. I can't really say there was one. I'm trying to think. I think this season I've been pretty on the ball in terms of transfer timings. I don't think there's one that I felt like I completely missed the boat on. And maybe that's also because I've just been sort of lucky in a sense. What's my opinion on some people? TC's, I think triple captain Solanke is brilliant, but obviously I just hope he plays for those people and that's it. Foden. Yeah, I guess I wish I would I wish I wildcarded 26 with Foden. That's it. Week 30 is the most important because it's after national break, and then we see teams in form. Well, I mean, there's a small little fixture swing. Do you churn out your own data like XG and XA in Excel sheet? I mean, my cheat sheets have the sort of XG and XA of like leading players, right? But I also look a lot to like team stats, XG and XA, and then I also look at models, so like projected points models, and yeah, I mean, I myself just go through websites like FBref, and I look through, for example, the underlying stats of all the players. I'd love to get Darwin back in my team as soon as possible. Have you missed the boat on Foden? I mean, technically yes, but then I think you can get Foden back around maybe 31, 33, that sort of time. When is a good time to use wildcard? Once again, team dependent. I think 28 is a natural good window. Obviously, this week it's gone now. 30-31 is a good one. 35-36 is another good one. Like, does it make sense to wildcard 34? No. Does it make sense to wildcard 33? Probably no. So yeah, who do you think is winning Liverpool City? I'm gonna have to say Liverpool. Close though. I mean, it could be a draw. Played FPL for 13 seasons, and this people are too serious to the game. At the end, it's for the joy of the game. I mean, like, yeah, everyone plays FPL for different reasons. Like, I'm very competitive. I wish I could do, as well as I could. But yeah, what are my point projections for this game week? I mean, I don't have point projections my own. So I don't have, for example, my own routine model, but I have underlying stats to hand, and I have clean sheet odds that I look at from gambling sites, and I have goals and assist odds. So generally speaking, I also look at it from those terms. I mean, obviously, the best captain this week is Solanke by far. A lot of the other picks, you can sort of make decisions just from intuiting odds. Hate to say it, probably City. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. Wildcard 29 if I don't have free hit. I mean, wildcard 29 doesn't make any sense for me because I think. I mean, you might have to, like, if you think about it like this, right? Unfortunately, if you go too invested into those teams and those players, it could lead to it being harder to plan for a 37 bench boost regardless. But you might have to do it. Like, I mean, if you have one or two players, then I mean, you're kind of forced into that wild card. I agree. Your best season is this one, and your OR is 170k. The thing is that you enjoy it. Awesome. What do I do for work? I do accounting. Best time to wildcard for a bench boost? Well, 36 then. I'd have to answer 36. I mean, in theory, if you want to maximize your bench boost, of course, it has to be before the week where we're going to have the biggest doubles in the season. As a Bruno owner, it's really frustrating watching him. Yeah, I mean, he is an absolute whiner on the pitch. Yeah, score a screamer, Bruno. What are you doing crying all the time? All right, so in 14 minutes, we get to find news that Bruno's going to start, and then he's just going to kill me. Yeah. Yeah, that's unfortunate, Theodore. Hope you get some better luck soon. Am I free at 29? Yes, I am free at 29. What is my educational background? Studied law in university. Explains why you're very analytical. Appreciate the content. Appreciate that. I mean, I'm not that. I mean, like, accounting is not that much like just about purely looking at analytics, I suppose. But yeah, I do look at numbers a lot, and sometimes we have faith in numbers. I sound smart. Okay, thanks, Logan. Appreciate that. Lawyer here too. Sweet. My first season is this one, and I'm around 100k. That's awesome. Feels like you're lucky with a lot of content. I mean, look, honestly, the reality, of course, is if you're following a content creator and they've had a great season, very unlikely that you're going to have a bad season. But at the same time, I mean, I make my content so that people can kind of, manage their own FPL teams without necessarily needing to copy my team. So if you watch the cheat sheet videos, I hope that can actually give you a lot of advice without having to like copy my team. I always tell people don't copy my team for no reason. To my balance sheets that are out. I mean, because I'm not using my hand and paper, I suppose, yes, like pen and paper. Of course, my balance sheets. I mean, but I'm also not really accounting. I'm also auditing as well. So, I suppose I start from balance sheets that zero out. Who were my mentors when I started making FPL videos? No one really. I just watched other people's FPL content. But to be honest, in my process in terms of arriving at this point, I think I've spent more time in terms of, do I like audit? No, absolutely not. It's very boring. But in terms of like going back to the question of good luck after this game week because I need it. Thank you, Costadin. I hope that was a genuine good luck. Am I interested in other sports? Yeah. Basketball, tennis. I mean, in the past, MMA. Do I play football? If yes, what? I mean, I do, but more so like five-a-side football. So more sort of like a midfield role or right wing. I don't know how you're Bruno on your team. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Bruno will probably leave my team soon. That was a pretty big subtle dig. I mean, I just wildcarded so you guys could catch up, right? Is that the joke? Do I go fishing? Unfortunately, not. Favorite planet in the solar system? I mean, Earth. Because I live in it. FPL is so random. Last year's winner is 1 million. I mean, I think, what's interesting is actually the people who play with more of an analytical process have consistently better ranks than people who, for example, got, like, I think what we usually see is, like, if we see studies that look at, for example, last season's top 100k versus people who, play, let's say, analytically, for example, and are, for example, within the Elite 1000, which is a data set of elite players who play with analytics. What we usually see is that the median rank for the top 100k players versus the Elite 1000 is vastly inferior to the Elite 1000. So people who actually had a good rank last season, that's not an indication of whether you're going to have a good rank next season. Usually what happens is if you play with an analytical approach, you do end up having better results long term. You walk hard too. We'll never go for that disgrace for a captain. Are you planning to make content for the upcoming Euros? Yeah, absolutely, I am. I'll be working as well with another friend of mine who's very much invested in like a data modeling background. So we should be able to create some really interesting content, hopefully, for the Euros, which I'm very excited for. In the quiet moments of FPL, will you continue to make content? Are we saying? I mean, yeah, the Euros will be something I make content for. I do play Football Manager. Interesting that you asked, but I don't think I'll make it on the channel here. So, you might be able to see me on Twitter. I might be on Twitch potentially streaming a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I also have a full-time job, so I'll probably just go back to that, which I'm always on in my full-time job, but just yeah. Asif says Bailey, Powell, Watkins, Gabriel Saliba, Fleck, and Doughty's son. One free transfer. Would I still free out on 29? I mean, so you're really just having Bailey, Powell, Watkins, and Fleck and Doughty and Son, right? I mean, you could still free at 29. I think you're on the precipice of it. Variance is a very interesting and underspoken part of FPL. Even an analytical approach can struggle as the short term is longer than most people believe. I mean, variance is more so specific to a certain manager, right? So I think what I'm saying is that the median rank of, let's say, someone who takes an analytics approach is very good. But obviously, within a median rank, you're going to have people who actually, within that data set, have extremely bad variance, extremely good variance. So all I'm saying is that a lot of people who follow analytics approaches will, in general, like on average, get good results. But of course, there's going to be people who suffer more and suffer less. Gary, that's a fair point. I mean, yeah, look, I mean, data modeling, I think a lot of it, I mean, even if you think about it, for example, like, you know, even if you don't like look at data, like you can take it from a very routine approach where it's like, oh, I believe Watkins is going to have 7 points. I believe Solanke is going to have 6 points. I believe Morris is going to have 5 points. Even that is, in a sense, data modeling. But I think to be fair to and consistent with one approach, at least you have to sort of model the entire field of players and then actually decide how you make your transfers. But I know a lot of people play this game a lot more emotionally than that, and that's fine because you can still get results by doing so. Mo says, thoughts on bringing Haaland, Salah, and wildcard 30-31. Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to go Salah plus Haaland drops because the reality is if you go for a wildcard 30/31, you're going to drop Watkins, right? Particularly if you go wildcard 31, there's absolutely no way I think you go for Watkins. And so that's going to free up a lot more cash for you. What I meant by lucky due to content creators is not so much copying, but more so have a Gray sound. Yeah, no, I agree with you, E7. Gray says, I wildcard on the back of your advice when you did, but tweaked your team by having Luis and Odegaard. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm happy for you. Exactly. Like a lot of people who wildcard in 26 actually have better teams than me or had better outcomes, and that's fine. I think playing FPL from an analytical perspective reduces your likelihood of missing out on points. I mean, yes or no? I think you also just, I missed out on a lot of points recently, right? I had no Foden. But I think I'm able to accept those outcomes as just the reality of football. Like, if I, for example, put bets down for Foden to score versus Bournemouth and Foden to score a brace in the previous match, I mean, I'd be a rich man. But the reality is I don't bet with hindsight. So the same way I, for example, don't play FPL with hindsight. So when hindsight happens, I don't really care. Can you make a video for people with no chips left, please? I mean, I think with no chips left, you probably just need to look at, for example, the cheat sheet and just realize that you have to go for players that don't miss out on fixtures. So, for example, like this week, you want to go for players like Bowen or Barkley. How do you manage to watch matches living in East Asia? I mean, I don't live in East Asia. I live in London. But obviously, when I was in Hong Kong, I had to wake up at like 3, 4 a.m. in the morning and just get my phone out and just watch the Twitter stream. Catch up Kings. Sorry. Meathman says, who do you think will win the Euros? I mean, I'm biased. I'm half Spanish, so I hope obviously Spain will win. But in reality, I think it's between like England and France, right? Are there any upcoming game weeks where you think you could gain ranks? I think 28, 31, 34, obviously, for the reason of the free hit. And look, ultimately, let me say something now. So if you think about all the players we need to have or want to have in the future, Palmer, Son, Saka, Foden, Salah, Watkins, Solanke, Haaland, Isaac, Darwin. Those are more than 8 players. And those are more than your regular 7 players. So the reality is whoever actually maximizes the most amount of points from those players and whoever gets lucky in a sense is going to benefit the most. I even missed out Anthony Gordon, who's going to double in Gaming 34, or most likely he's going to double in Gaming 34. So that's tough. Did I grow up in the United States? No, I grew up in Hong Kong, but I went to an international school, so I kind of have this accent. Can always count on England to crumble when it counts. I don't know, but there's so much talent this time around. I just really hope it doesn't crumble. I mean, like Rice, Bellingham, like what a midfield. I'm Spanish Hong Kong. Yeah, I'm half Chinese or half Cantonese, or I mean half Hong Kong rather. Have I ever been to New Zealand? Unfortunately not, but I'd love to go. I did have some friends when I was growing up and I was gaming and playing like competitive games. I would have some players from Auckland and things like that. Do I speak Mandarin? I mean, a little bit. I think my Cantonese is a lot stronger. Like I'm fluent in Cantonese, but definitely not in Mandarin. International school accent, yeah, that's what I call it. But some people don't recognize that. They just think I'm from the States. But the thing is, if I speak to an American, they probably don't think I'm American. So I'm just quickly checking if there's any news. But it doesn't actually seem like there's that much news, which is fine. Sorry for this personal question. How much revenue do I make from FPL content? I can't disclose it, but obviously I can't disclose it publicly. But I can obviously, you can message me privately, and I can potentially respond. How do I meet my partner? Just at university. Have people realized? I've realized people who learn English in Asia always end up with a somewhat. Yeah, I think so, because obviously like a lot of the media that you consume, outside of England is going to be American. You moved to Hong Kong last year. It took a while to get used to all the shouting. Um, Yeah, but I think another thing too is like, are people shouting, or is that just how they usually speak? I suppose obviously it's like, yeah. I mean, for example, like in mainland China, people probably do shout a little bit more than in Hong Kong, which I notice. But I come from Hong Kong, so then I also don't necessarily notice the shouting, I suppose, in Hong Kong. So it's just like different levels. What ethnicity is my partner? Nah, she's Colombian. Would you like to do this full time? Yeah, ideally, yes. I definitely don't make enough to go full time. Maybe if that can briefly answer your question, Gautam. What's my team in EPL? I don't have one actually. So unbiased, I suppose, a positive when it comes to playing FPL. Score predictions for United versus Everton? Okay, just because I own Bruno, I'm going to say 3-0, but it's not going to happen. So maybe 2-1 to United. This has turned into Q&A Saturday. Well, there's nothing to do, so here we are sat with a Q&A. So I appreciate you guys for sticking with me. I really appreciate that. Bruno, man, do something. Yeah, me every week, basically. Although he did do something last week, but he was just on my bench because I had Neto and he got injured in 45 minutes. And what's his face? And Essie got injured as well. What a lovely little wild card this has been. I mean, that's another thing too. For example, like I was down 6 points last week, for no reason. Um, like this stuff happens. No one expected Rat. I mean, that was an absolute screamer as well. So yeah, like not exactly the most, like not the most well earned assist from Bruno, but it was an assist all the same. Yeah, a bit of bad luck with injuries because obviously this week I'd have a much stronger team, right? Fran, do you think Saliba to Porro is a good move this week? Absolutely. I mean, it still depends on who your fourth/fifth defender is, but yeah, generally speaking, yeah. Have I been to mainland China? I mean, I've been to different parts of China. Yeah, I mean, found it perfectly fine. I mean, a lot of it's because everywhere you go in China is very different. So you were checking Bruno's numbers this season. I can't believe you and Andy have him. I mean, are you talking about his numbers in terms of goals and assists, or are you talking about his numbers in terms of underlying stats? Casual Bruno performance. Shout out teammates. Why not ref and get a yellow? Yeah, that's true. That's been Bruno this season. What's your team value? How did you gain so much value? I got players at the right time, really. I don't know. I bought Palmer early because I was very confident in Palmer. I got Porro early because I was confident in Porro. Got Richarlison early. I don't know. Um, Gabriel. Gabriel is not in the squad, but are you sure you're talking about Gabriel, or are you talking about Gabriel Martinelli? I don't think Gabriel, the defenders, is not in the squad. I haven't seen any news about that. Zinchenko's in the matchday squad, but Gabriel Martinelli misses out. Exactly, yeah. Martinelli missing out is just that. I mean, I can't believe I own Bruno either, but it did seem to make sense at the time. Martinelli is also a Gabriel. Yeah, he is. There's 3 Gabriels in the squad. Yeah, Martinelli is kind of underrated. I mean, he's underrated, but the thing, of course, is like this season has been pretty poor for his minutes, right? So, I mean, like he's always capable of having like a 1 million hole or things like that, and yeah. Title predictions. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, it's actually an extremely tight race. I'm kind of hoping for a Liverpool one just for the narrative of Klopp winning on his way out, but that's it. I really don't mind either way. Like, I'm not emotionally invested if, like another team wins. Or, I mean, Arsenal, they've been brilliant this season too. Like, I can't complain if they win. The idea that people are transferring out Haaland for Morris is scary. I mean, I think it's, as I said, I think the Haaland Morris move makes sense if you're free at 34. If you're free at 29, I think it makes even less sense. Good morning to you, Nigel. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, Gabriel's not out. Bruno always underperforms. I mean, that's not true. That's only true for this season. Like, I mean, your understanding of a player might even change within a single game week. Like, you could have said that Eze, for example, always underperforms, but when I brought him in for Sheffield United home, and he actually delivers, like, is that luck or is that? I mean, everyone is capable of overperforming what here and then. Like, you just can't consistently underperform. I know Bruno's actually done that this season, which is mad. But yeah. When enough Neto's, I mean, obviously you're just hoping for maybe one Solanke benching, right, Nigel? Which I think is totally fine. He was my vice captain. Eze's free kick against Spurs, it was beautiful. I mean, Eze is a lovely player. You're either the Maverick or the fruitcake. I mean, it's a pretty Maverick move. I quite like it. Hopefully, Neto gets a penalty save for you and for me. Bruno Fernandes has created more chances than any other player in Europe. I mean, he is a very good player. This is talk about Bruno. But yeah, is United horrible? Yes, they are. Are Bruno's underlying stats horrible? No, they're not. But yeah. I've had 12 injuries in 6 weeks. Look, and that happens. Like that's part of the luck that we talk about in FPL. Yeah, I know it's the Bournemouth Neto. I've got both Netos in my team. Bruno on the right wing. I don't know. We can always hope for the rejuvenation of the Leicester performance that he pulled out last season at right wing. Yeah, unfortunately, I have one of the other Netos on the bench, so it is what it is. He just hoos the ball and prays something happens. Any news on Adebayo? I don't think we actually got news on Adebayo, did we? McTominay's on the right. I mean, we'll see how it goes. Which PL teams? I don't have a PL team. So optimistic. I mean, I'm not optimistic. Like I don't have crazy expectations for Bruno. Bruno is an example of where lagging statistics aren't congruent with the complexity of reality. Um, I agree with you, generally speaking, in terms of how bad United are and how bad his season has been in that context. But I also think that he has generally just been unlucky as well. Like there is an element of that. Because obviously our expectations for United have continuously dropped over the course of the season. There wasn't really like any point where we thought United were better. But you also have to think about how as our expectations drop, like it doesn't mean that we have zero base expectations for Bruno. But yeah, I mean, he's probably going to leave my team soon, if we're being honest, because the fixtures obviously just get worse. His role changed. Yeah, he plays deeper at times, but also the reality is his underlying stats are still tremendously good. Like he is actually the best. The like if you look at anyone who actually has accumulated, good underlying stats, and the reality is it's not just lagging statistics, but it's just there's nothing lagging. Like his actual underlying stats this season have been good enough to, warrant more than, I don't know, whatever like points he's got this season, which might be like 90 FPL points. So Bruno is like a very capable player, but he has underperformed. Someone like Garnacho, for example, has within the same team and same context, smashed it. Are you planning to take a hit for Salah in Game 30? Yeah, very possibly. Very possibly. He's all Sicily. I mean, yeah, but we say that, but it's like this isn't the first time United have had a bad season, if that makes sense. And Bruno has like this might be the first season that United have had a bad year per se, and Bruno's done poorly. Because obviously, like even at the days of like that Ralph Rangnick and bad Ole season, like he was done well. Kabore asked to whom to play. Okay, I'm just going to mute you. Interesting question there. I'd probably have started Kabore, but that's about it. You're still kicking most of our asses, Fran. Anyway, best of luck, everyone. Cheers. Take care, David. All the best. Trippier has also had good stats, but still a bad. I mean, has Trippier been a bad FPL asset? I've owned Trippier for like 3 weeks this season, and I think he got like 18 something and something good points. Like he's still very good. I like Bruno. I mean, I don't like Man United under Ten Hag as well. I mean, yeah, I'm happy to say that Bruno over Foden was a bad decision. Like I could agree to that. But is he just inherently bad? Like I'd probably also say no. Good luck to you as well, Chai. I'll have a look towards your wild card later on. Be interesting to see how it is. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, he's definitely a troll. What do you think of free at 38? I think, for example, if you're planning for 3 at 34, and suddenly, let's say 3 at 34 seems to be quite bad, why not just shift over your free hit to 38? Please, Fran, what are the chances Solanke plays 90 minutes in both games? I think it's quite high. At least, I mean, if you're saying 80 minutes at least for the 2 games, I think it's quite high. Probably 80%. That he plays over 80, which I think is good enough. Trippier from game week 5 to game week. Yeah, exactly. I owned Trippier for like, 5 weeks, and he was incredible. How good are my cooking skills? I don't know. Probably not as good as Bruno's lack of cooking skills. In your veterancy, what's the most points you got on a player? I mean, so there's a website that shows this, and I can go through it with you guys now. Let's have a look at it. So there's a website called FPL Optimized. I can't remember for previous seasons because honestly I don't care about it that much. Like I'm not that emotional about a player. I'm not going to pick a player because he did well for me previously. I mean, I'll sell Senesi if he's not available for Gaming 30. JT, I hope that answers your question. So on this website called FPL Optimized, yeah, Newcastle defense has turned horrific. All right, whenever this loads, this website should show you the amount of gain you have within a certain player within your season, and it should also show you the relative gain in terms of effective ownership, that sort of gain. But potentially, it's not going to be. I think it's going to take. Unfortunately, because I think the deadline has just culminated, it's very hard to actually get the data that we want for FPL optimized. But usually, you can actually see a relative gain team. Maybe what I've done actually doesn't make any sense to do in terms of refreshing the page, but hopefully it works. And if it doesn't, otherwise I'll suggest going on to this website later on. Is their attack really doing well? Yes, it is. Yeah, I tried to balance my picks based on the data you and Blackbox provide versus my subjective gut feel. You picked Moody's on gut feel. That's awesome. Awesome. Other times it's not gone well. Dropping Bowen before trouble, but that's the thing too. It's like when you go for Bowen and the data isn't good, and suddenly he suddenly just reverses, everything within one game week. Like, is that a symptom of like good fortune for Bowen potentially for that fixture, or is it the reality that Bowen just isn't that good, like inherently? Like, is he a little bit overrated as a pick potentially? I think in general we tend to see, for example, the data correlates quite well to points, but the issue, of course, is that FPL is always about owning people in specific weeks, but we can't predict the future. So you try to arm yourself with the data, and of course you can always go with your subjective gut feel, but that's always, as you say, subjective gut feel. Like you could have woken up feeling bad and suddenly you go for another pick, and I don't know, the pick that you were set on the whole week was going to be good, but like what would be the, like, is there any way you can actually re-bring out that feeling where you're always going to have the right transfer your gut. Like, the reality is no, unless someone's gut's just incredible. And honestly, there's been no FPL player that I know of that just plays purely intuitively like that and has had like incredible results for more than one season. A lot of the elite managers, quote unquote, still play with or with reference to some other data like you do, and of course that changes their subjective gut feeling. But yeah, like no one just, I think, sits there and just has gut feel. Unfortunately, the game has changed a lot, where a lot of people have maximized the ability to project points and to make FPL transfers. So right now, the skill level of the top 1,000, the top 10,000, the top 100,000 managers is a lot better than it was 10 years ago. So yeah, I mean, Tony could do well. I remember last season when Tony was pretty close to scoring some goals for Arsenal. Please, guys, what are the odds Solanke plays 90 minutes in both games? I think it's very high. I'd say 80%. Not 90 minutes, though. No Solanke, Muniz instead. Pray for me. I mean, Muniz is not going to break your rank. Let's be honest. Like, Solanke is highly owned. Muniz is not. Morris captain. Still a good captain, though. But yeah, I generally speaking, going back to that point, Nigel, I think it's totally fine to once again have a semblance of both, like your gut feel plus data. You want to make more manager-based decisions on top of data and gut feel. Totally fine. All right, so this website's not going to load. So, but I do encourage people to have a look at it because it can give some data reference towards your season. You started Kabore. Fran is very rare. Man with zero lover. Oh, thank you, mate. I transferred Tony out after having for 3 weeks. If he scores, you're uninstalling. No, I mean, like, I tried to transfer Tony out as well. I mean, if he scores, I don't care, really. I'll be happy for Chai, I guess. But yeah, like Tony, I'm generally a little bit sick of him. I'll have him next week, and hopefully he'll do well next week instead. I'm quickly just checking chats as well. Man was zero. I mean, I did actually have some haters during Walkergate, but it is what it is. Anyways, I think that's gonna be it for me. Who do you feel might be the left field pick holder for this game week? Let me see. Oh, have a lovely Mother's Day, Cellar Dweller. Take care. Nigel the Crab. I'm not quite sure, to be honest. Maybe Eze. Honestly, I'm thinking about Eze. Foden a season hold? I mean, he very well could be. Just wants you to say Neto. Is he left field, though? He's my vice captain. Madison Brace. That'll be interesting. Right, okay, I've got to bounce myself. I hope you guys have a lovely weekend. Good luck to all of you, and all the best. I'll see you guys next week. Take care, and goodbye.